Hey everyone, Derek here from WayScript. In this one, let's take a look at how we can find running EC2 instances, create a snapshot of them, and then reboot them if they have issues. Let's get started. Starting out, I'll create this script in my team so I can share it with my teammates. Then I'll click on create a new script, and we'll call this one EC2 backup and reboot, and then click on create. What this will do is put us inside of our layer where we can build all the pieces that we need. What we want to do is, if we have an issue, then check out our EC2 instances and then reboot them. That issue piece will come from a Datadog trigger, so we can use it. As you can see, I've already set this up. So if you need any help setting this up, there's a video linked down below that will help you out. In my case, I will just turn this on. Now, what we want is the webhook data, so we'll make sure that that is on too. What that does is give us an event variable which will populate whenever our webhook fires. So whenever we get a Datadog alert, we'll get this event variable populated down here. I went ahead and mocked that Datadog alert to come through, so we should see this event variable populate down here in the variables panel. We'll give it a few seconds. After a few seconds, we see that event variable populates, and we can use it throughout our script to programmatically select when to do these events. We'll do that using a little if statement. So we'll pull in that conditional step and we'll say if EC2 in event title, then we'll go through and do these checks. Awesome. So we have our condition set up to where if we get a Datadog alert that contains the word EC2 in the title, then we'll do these events. Now we'll pull in the events by using a Python step. Awesome. Now that we're in this Python step, what we can do is use the Boto 3 client. To use the Boto 3 client, we'll have a requirement. So we'll have to be sure to add that to our requirements.txt file over here on the left. We'll type that in and then go back to our WS file and start typing in code. So in this example, we have a few imports, which I'll copy and paste in. And these imports will just let us use the Boto 3 library so we can programmatically interact with AWS resources. I've also included pandas here in case you want to write to a spreadsheet, and also datetime so we can get the current date. Next, there's a couple of different ways we can interact with AWS resources using Boto 3. In this example, I'll just use a client, and I'll pull in a function that we'll use to build this Boto 3 client. This Boto 3 client will need an access key ID and a secret access key ID. And these come from an IAM user management. I've already got those created. So what I'll do is I will go over to my .secrets file over here, and then I'll add these values. We have key ID and then secret key ID. So I'll add both of those in right now. Once you have those placed into your .secrets file, you can interact with them just like variables on the WayScript platform. So what we'll see now is when we run this simple step, we'll get an error because we're not creating our client, but it'll refresh our variables and we'll be able to find our new secrets over here in the environment panel. And we'll drag and drop these into our build client function. Now, if we were to simply print, we'll do build client and get back the response. We'll run this just to make sure that we're connected. And it looks like we have our client object created and we can view it down here in our log. This client object is how we'll interact with all the AWS resources. So now what we may want to do is go through and get information about each of our EC2 instances. Let's say that we want to get all the information from each of our instances, such as volume ID, instance ID, and also the status on if they're running or not. To do that, what we'll do is create another function. We'll pull this in from Github too. And all of these are linked down below. So pasting that in. Now we have our EC2 info function. And what we're doing is we're using this function here to build our client. Then we're getting a response from a Boto 3 describe instances method. And with that response, we're going through and getting the information that we want. The information that we're grabbing here is the image ID, instance ID, the volume ID, and the status. Then we're writing this all to a list and then appending that list to a second list. That way we can interact with this information in future functions. Let's go ahead and view what instances I have running. And we'll do that by saying print EC2 info, and we'll execute this. Running this, I believe I only have one instance up right now, but we'll be able to see it. We have each of those bits of information in our log, and now we can interact with those bits of information in a future function. Awesome, so we have our baseline. The overall objective here is to reboot and back up running instances whenever we get that Datadog alert. Now we can figure out our running instances, so let's go ahead and create that backup. Create snapshots. I'll do this with this function here, and what this is doing is using this EC2 info function that we just created. Then with that information, we're going through and creating a snapshot of each unique volume from our instances. By default, this will create a snapshot in your S3 bucket in the same region. So I'm working in US East 2, and my snapshot will be there as well. Now, we can return our unique volumes in case we need them. Finally, let's go ahead and then create a function to reboot running EC2 instances. We'll copy this and paste it in. We're doing the same thing here by getting information about our running instances, and then we're rebooting each one. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we create a backup. Now that we have all these functions, let's go ahead and use them. Running this, we should get back a snapshot created, which we do, and then we get back none because we're not returning any response on our reboot running EC2 instances. Now I'll pull up my AWS management console, and we can go and check out that snapshot. Pulling over my EC2 console, we have our information here. We see that I just ran it twice for the video, but in yours, when it's automated, it'll just be once. And then we have our snapshot ID here. Also, we can view my instance, and it looks like the status checked and our instance state is now running. So if you have any questions or comments about this video, please let me know and I'll help you out. Until next time.